Meanwhile, Chabi Yayi, son of former Beninese president and current opposition figure Thomas Boni Yayi, has been arrested early Sunday at his home, according to several of his relatives. No reason was given for the arrest, which comes a week after the failed coup attempts there. Associates say no one is sure of what Chabi Yayi is being accused of. Several arrests have been taking place since the December 7 unconstitutional regime change attempt. They include alleged participants, the former Minister of Defense and key opposition figure, candidate Azanan. Benin has also issued an international arrest warrant against Pan-Africanist and anti-Western influencer Kemi Sheba. Dr. Sam Amadi, director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, joins me in the studio to look at this developing story. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, ECOWAS leaders have met. They seem to be talking tough. But, I mean, President Tinubu's words today, represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, he says, fraternity, not force, must determine and define the future of ECOWAS. What do you make of that? Can ECOWAS really forge ahead without tackling issues of democratic backsliding by elected government officials? Is the bloc applying double standards here?
I think maybe ostrich more like, they're doing the ostrich. Again, right from AU time, the disposition of African leaders have been more of solidarity, and what that means really for them is watching each other's back. So clearly, and that's why part of the peacekeeping efforts, which has been successful in ECOWAS and the African region, has been more about protecting each other's regime and less about really protecting the integrity, even territorial sovereignty, because essentially, some may argue that much of French West Africa, their sovereignty has been impaired by France in many ways, and ECOWAS, or neither ECOWAS nor AU leaders came together, to say, look, we want to protect real sovereignty in terms of self-determination. So primarily, the focus has always been about, regime protection, and that means, being against coup. Now, there's still to be said about the need for solidarity. I mean, regional blocks, the global wealth distribution and opportunities are now regional. So even as strong as America is, an outlier in many ways, it's still focused on the Asian Pacific, focused on the hemisphere. American new policy is around protecting the hemisphere, and then ensuring that there's no risk and tragedies and threats. So I think that the speech, good in many ways, because it's also mentioned the fact that they need to put together, there's some degree of internal rivalry or resentment, especially against Nigeria, the big brother. And I think you can hear that from the president's speech, saying, look, this is not about Nigeria, this is about commonwealth, common protection, common threat, and working together. Yeah. And instead of reclamation and resentment, we could put together, which is a strong message, a good message this time, but the color is that message should be broad enough to also activate the ECOWAS protocol on good governance. ECOWAS protocol on electoral integrity of elections, and then be, sound it out. Look, we have to make sure. Look at the story breaking in Benin Republic, arrests. Look at effort to amend the constitution. So you don't see African leaders address the underlying causes. I mean, yes, we are facing unusual kind of both environmental and geopolitical risk from invading terrorists, collapse of Libya and all that. Those are, of course, climate change have some impact, but I think the real catalyst of this crisis is actually the very, bad index of governance in the region, and that doesn't get mentioned in this kind of, forum. Indeed. So ECOWAS cannot be talking about stability without addressing governance failures, corruption, public disillusionment across the region, and all of that. But when you also hear that no single country can do it alone, this has to be done together. How is this any different from what ECOWAS had said in the past? They also highlighted the reversal of a coup in Benin, which was the most recent failed coup attempt in the region. I mean, is there really a genuine turning point for ECOWAS? Do you see that? I think maybe this can lead to that. Again, in my experience at Foreign Affairs as an advisor many years ago, we discovered that the French West Africa oppose us a lot, and even the things that Nigeria should have as of right, they advocate us sometimes and conspire. So, but now, and again, Nigeria has, if you like, a manifest destiny of protecting ECOWAS. Nigeria is the big person there. Nigeria, there's no shame in admitting that ECOWAS has to depend on Nigeria for everything, including for even the basic things you would expect from agencies like ECOWAS in terms of what they do with themselves, what they protect themselves. Nigeria has to play the big brother role. But the bigger problem here is Nigeria getting the required respect, support, and so one hopes that President Tinubu and the new guys feel chummy because of the recent, they have to be together. Tragedy brings us together with the Sahel, with the challenge from Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and now the attempt Guinea and Benin Republic and Nigeria playing yeoman role to get ahead of that crisis. Maybe this is a moment to cement a new relationship based on mutuality, which should first start with acknowledging Nigeria's historic role, position, and capability. And Nigeria also understanding that they have to treat the West African brothers very intimately as brothers and sisters, and again, be more exemplar in terms of both good governance, modeling economic growth, modeling good governance, and strong protection in terms of regional politics. So we are dealing with East Africa, Southern Africa, or dealing with Europe. And Nigeria then has to be the one that they look up to and say, look, Nigeria has proven leadership. The problem is that as Nigeria wobbles in terms of its internal governance, in terms of its loss of voice in global politics, then it gets diminished and doesn't attract the level of respect that it ought to attract in West Africa. And then, the gap exists. So Nigeria is destined to be the leader, but that leadership has to, elicit support, and it has to also be morally persuasive. Leadership can have the power, the resources, the strength, the muscle, but you don't have the attraction. Soft power is actually missing, and that's what we need to put together.
Well, they're talking about being proactive and not reactive. And when you talk about Nigeria, during the course of the week, we heard Nigeria's foreign minister speak about how this is some sort of self-preservation as well, that the internal crisis in Nigeria are connected to the regional instability we are seeing. But can Nigeria, in asserting this leadership that you talk about, can it balance that with what is going on within the country at the moment, economically, security-wise, and even socially? Is Nigeria not stretching itself while trying to assert that leadership in stabilizing the region? Can it do that? That's
a growing debate. People argue that maybe we should pull back and heal ourselves. So physician, heal thyself. So that's the debate. People say, okay, we are giving a lot and receiving less. So one aspect that we're not getting the commensurate respect, support we ought to have. But again, they say also we are depleting resources. We are distracted. We are in the position to play the big brother, whether in African or regional, and some people argue that perhaps we should pay attention to Nigeria condition. But again, I think it would be short-sighted to overlook the fact that we should see West Africa as expansion of Nigerian economic possibilities. That's what has not happened. So it's not just about showing big brother. It's not about supporting them. It's not about stopping Coups. It's also about creating a scale of prosperity. See West Africa as an economic region where Nigeria could actually expand, improve their lives, also expand our own economic capability. So a market exists. It's a big market. So Nigeria is perhaps maybe two-thirds of that. But that one-third that is supportive, we can activate it. So my sense would be that it can do both things. It can refocus intensely on solving a Nigerian problem, but reconceptualizing those problems as also requiring very decent, intense, and progressive focus on West Africa. So take, for example, insecurity. We just can't secure this Nigeria without, in a sense, dealing with the inroad of terrorists in the Sahel or the Gulf of Guinea. So in a way, we have to do both. We have to make sure that those places are stable, especially as we have a commitment to borderless economy. So Nigeria cannot ring-fence itself from West Africa, and therefore the contagions and the risks and threats there would sooner or later get to Nigeria.
I mean, you take it with the baggage. It comes all together in an era of AFCFTA, the largest free market from Africa. Dr. Amadi, stay with me. Let's turn and flip the page to some politics here in Nigeria. Well, Taraba State Governor Abu Kefas has officially registered as a member of the governing All Progressives Congress in the state. Receiving his membership card from his ward chairman in Wukari local government area of the state, the governor assured residents of transforming the state and ensuring inclusive governance. He says a new date will be announced for his ceremonial defection to the party. While the governor's earlier defection plan to the APC was postponed due to the abduction of students from Kebbi State.
All programs have been set for our movement to APC on the 19th of November. But in solidarity with national issues, especially the abduction of school children in Kebbi and other places, we decided to suspend it for the future. However, this is one of the processes that we need to embark on. Even if we have done the ceremony, we will still do this. While we await a new date for the ceremony, it is expedient and necessary that we do the registration fully in the party to be able to give us the full identity that we deserve, so that we can take charge and put the party straight for leadership in the state.
He has delegated us to come on his behalf, on behalf of the party, generally, to come and register you. We are here with the ward chairman of Hospital Ward, with the local government chairman of Okari local government APC, and the zonal chairman Taraba State, Southern Zone Taraba State, and then the deputy chairman.
Quick reaction. The Independent National Electoral Commission in Osun State says that he is not aware and was not informed of another primaries reportedly conducted by a faction of the Accord party in the state. INEC's public relations officer in the state, Musa Olurode, said the commission was unaware of the parallel exercise. Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you for your patience. Now let's turn to politics. Have we oversimplified the issues when it comes to defections and the health of opposition parties in Nigeria? A lot of blame seems to go to the governing party, causing the rancor in the opposition party. But should I take some blame here? I mean, when you look at what has happened in the Accord party in Osun State and elsewhere.
Well, maybe there are blames to go around. But again, I think the problem is that the structure, the state-society relationship determines the form of democracy you have. People think that democracy has the same characteristics across the world. Democracy may have universal principles, maybe basic ones, electoralism. People vote leaders, protection of human rights, institutional accountability, limitations of power. Those are basic principles. But how they get institutionalized is a result of history, dynamism of social culture. So in Nigeria, the problem is that more so now, the idea of elections and politics are mostly economic and prebendal, just basically a kind of patrimony. So it means that when the party at the center is powerful and maybe less ethical in terms of engagement, it signals to people at the periphery, the other parties, that they need to behave in a particular way. So what we are seeing is three factors responsible. One, the seeming abuse of power, which is part of what the opposition would say, that the ruling party is abusing power, is perhaps overreaching, and maybe not illegally, but unethically. Second is the fact that the integrity of the electoral process has been largely compromised. So people see it, and in their brain, they just say, slam dunk. INEC will declare the ruling party, courts will affirm them. So the inability of the courts or any of these regulatory institutions to effectively control this state action creates a sort of fait accompli. And thirdly, the output of that is that people get demoralized and people lack the moral courage. And because the masses, the voters themselves, are perhaps merely voters, if they want to vote. 20% doesn't show strong civic engagement with the political process. And so they are not
many voters as against
active citizens who, before even votes, strongly engage and ensure that the procedure, and people forget that elections are a process that starts even before primaries. And so when they are compromised, the end point, people just vote and go home. Maybe a couple of active guys make some noise. So I think we have to blame the role occupants, INEC, police, judiciary, because they don't inspire confidence that there's somebody who can hold back, push back the ruling party if they want to go, roguish, illegal, or be a criminal. Again, the politicians themselves, also, like I said, the idea of politics and elections is basically transactional. It's about economic well-being. So the idealism to hold back and fight for a set of values, probably we saw that in the First Republic with Awolowo, maybe Azikiwe, Amadi Bello, these guys beyond what politics give them. So they are typical Max Weber's idea of those who live not from politics, but for politics. So here we have most people who live from politics. So the idealism to fight for a set of values, for 4 years, stay out. That's why after 4 years they feel like they're drowning. They can't just go to public. We have made political power the source of existence. So what we are seeing now is a complexity of fragile social system. That's what we're talking about, state-society relationship. And so yes, blame the ruling party perhaps for being unethical, overreaching, but blame also the opposition party, blame INEC, blame the courts. Because if people know that electoral elections are going to be competitive, people will not take up. Because again, look at 2023 again. Many of the state governors lost their base because of the fact that the then obedient movement kind of was able to catalyze and mobilize people to. But again, when the real price failed because of INEC's own systemic problem, people forget that they actually did a lot. So there's a fatalism that, but you were able to win Lagos, you were able to win. Some governors lost Senate seats, some lost the Enugu Senate seat. That should have enabled citizens to say, you know what, we can actually win.
So as we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you, as the calendar draws closer ahead of next year's 2027 elections, beg your pardon, are we likely to see more fragmentation or consolidation when it comes to opposition parties? And how can they begin, when I say they, the opposition parties particularly, begin to rebuild the trust of the people to ensure that they're just not mere voters, but active participants?
Well, I think that burden rests on ADC.
Just ADC? In
the main, because two parts that we can go. We can go into convergence. I see two major convergence. You see, the governors, APC have been converging. People don't say convergence. When governors decamp to APC, it's like a coalition. So there's a coalition. Then there's also another coalition of ADC, the opposition. So what I think will happen in the days to come, ADC will be stronger. ADC, maybe people like P2B and others may finally...
Well, they are endorsing former Vice President Atiku Abubakar.
No, what I hear that they are insisting on a primary. So, so the people who are pushing for P2B...
Out of Adamawa, the story out of Adamawa today is that they have endorsed, they are throwing their weight behind former presidential...
All the...
ADC. That's the story we have from Adamawa.
No, if that's the case, if they agree, then that's fine for them. But the point I'm making that I see that ADC will get bigger. People are going to break out of APC, because what's going to happen APC is that those who are decamping with their team will displace some who are not available. And if Chichiribu can, bake the pie to get to everybody, some will go back. So we're going to see two coalitions now. The coalition of status quo, the governors, the ruling party, and perhaps the coalition of those who have been displaced. If some call them, whether you call them progressives, or you call them the displaced, what do you call them, displaced people. But the question is, which of this coalition will win the guy in the middle, the citizens? It seems to me that APC is doing well retool their message. You know, when you're in a ruling party and you're losing, the economy is bad, security is bad, they are trying to put a message like it's not as bad as you think. ADC has not put a very strong message that mobilizes the people to say we need to remove neo-patrimonialism. And what P2B showed that really mattered in 2023 was the sense that the small guy felt this is our party. We are fighting the big guys there. We have no structure. There's a criminality structure here. That symbolism works in politics, whether in Nigeria, whether in America. And that's what worked in 2014. Interestingly, ADC is struggling to create a fight, defined fight, between those who are making Nigeria bad. Borrow the language of the Coupists of 1963 or so, who said, well, after those who are giving bribe, we're after those who are making Nigeria look bad. So that has not happened, and the people are waiting. Perhaps there will be a process that will build up to when the people rise up and support either or A or B. To be fair, APC is doing good in trying to wrestle defeat from victory from the jaw of defeat, because they're actually messaging. They're doing well, trying to minimize the failure. You know, if you are incumbent and you're not doing well, it's difficult to campaign, but they're struggling. ADC, interestingly, has not, that is advantage in terms of messaging, has not really brought out a message that resonates with the Nigerian people in a way that we're going to see a grand fight between the coalition of the status quo and the coalition of those who have been deprived, beaten, angry, left behind. That's what the Labour Party did. But if they had structure, perhaps they would have, got all the way. But ADC, interestingly, is not doing that. So that's really the what to watch out in 2027. I
mean, I didn't want to interrupt you, but earlier you did mention Peter Obi and the ADC. We are yet to hear from Peter Obi on his final destination as it stands, because he was given ultimatum, I think, during the course of a week by ADC to decide.
Not ultimatum, it was
to decide what exactly is it doing. And I mean, for political watchers, you did highlight Peter Obi and relating him with the ADC, but is that something we're likely to see as these political parties try to shape up ahead of 2027?
My guess as an outsider is that Mr. Peter Obi will most likely shipping with the ADC because of the way the political landscape is shaping. I think, for example, Labour Party seems to be a no-no.
So is that a Peter Obi, Atiku Abubakar we're going to be seeing in the ADC?
Well, it depends on
how does that play out.
How it plays out is that it depends on ADC has said they'll go on a primary, and if they do a primary, if Atiku wins Peter Obi, my guess would be that Peter Obi, having committed to the platform, would probably play a role at what point. And it all depends on the dynamics between Peter Obi and Atiku. But if Peter wins the primary, which some of his supporters are gung-ho, say they can win, we will win, because my support. If they win, I don't see Atiku being a vice president to Peter Obi because of the status at time as former vice president. Perhaps he will endorse that ticket. But the critical question is for the stakeholders, the party leaders, to think around winnability. That's really what it is, And they borrow a leaf from 2014 when APC smartly brought then Buhari, who had the street credibility, who had the following, who had the momentum.
12 million votes.
Mythical. But again, who could contrast with Jonathan? Okay, this is reputed to be. We thought Jonathan was weak, now we know better. Or we thought Jonathan was corrupt. Or this guy, that contrasts energized the people. So I don't know what contrast the ADC managers want to draw in 2027 between Tinubu and whoever becomes their candidate. So if I was advising them, I would say pay attention to two things. One, you need to have a candidate that contrasts markedly from Tinubu to galvanize alternative, because this is an incumbent party. Secondly, you need to then get that candidate and assure yourself that you can back him up to win. So whether it's Atiku or Peter or Rotimi Amechi, who I think is also running, it's for them to say, but that decision will determine whether they can really sweep the carpet off the ruling party. The ruling party is strong, structurally. They're also smart. They built strong messaging that mitigates their failure. So when they're showing you figures that inflation has dropped by X amount, they're not telling you that when they came in, it was actually was. And so any improvement in the economics, in the security, plays to their advantage.
Interesting. Where do you put PDP in all of this?
PDP would have been, for me, the best party to be in opposition.
Would have been.
Yeah, because
you've written them off.
No, not for two things. They have to really, and INEC is not helping. Look at the contention. Wike has his own PDP. I took the view that the convention in Ibadan was illegal, and I said it on air here. But I'm not INEC, and I'm not the court. So the problem that the way the courts have been lackadaisical, two institutions that should determine, INEC or court. Now, people say maybe INEC should not. Then the court should be more emphatic. And the fact that these cases delay and lag on. For example, I heard as a case, even on ADC, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court wraps up these papers and cases and leave them. These are cases should be taken up, front-loaded to the Supreme Court and decided on clear principles. So if you decide a PDP today and it gets to, what's the guy's name? The senior advocate. Is the group led by Turaki group. I believe that if they have clarity in the next couple of months, they could actually be a strong rallying point, depending on who the presidential candidate is, because PDP has name that resonates across board. PDP has even with a depleting governorship. The problem is that the election to beat Tinubu will not depend on governors. It will depend on two things: people enthusiastic to come out and vote. And elections will be largely free and fair until structural rigging by INEC. Look at 2023. There are no violence. People don't know. Whatever happened, we saw defeats. If people rise up, they will defeat the incumbent, except DSS or INEC interferes. So what I see is that if they build up the election in 2027 is going to run on two things. Do we have a character, a candidate that people can trust to displace the incumbent? It's not going to run on party versus party. What helps PDP is that it's entrenched, and if you exclude the Wike group, which is sizable, maybe entrenched, powerful, you still have a rump of very strong activists, and if you have a good candidate, you can deliver. So the question for PDP will be two questions. One is, can you rectify who is PDP, who is in charge? Once INEC or the courts has a final word, then they can look at the scope of people who are the president, whether it's Jonathan or Obi, at least those I've mentioned. If they pick the person who has the best bona fides in that case, and they go back, they could do what Peter did to be the third guy who may even outrun the second guy. It depends also on what ADC does. So we can have three plates where ruling parties defined. Tinubu with the structure, with the governors, with the institutions. Then ADC with an alternative. Is it alternative enough? PDP with alternative. Is it alternative enough? And Nigerians can then say, those who don't want APC, we have to choose between A or B.
So there are alternatives.
So PDP, in my sense, will be a strong alternative if they can clarify their status. Right.
All right. Dr. Sam Amadi, the fact that even the courts or INEC has to determine who is the leader of a political party in itself is a problem.
And that's a problem. People have argued that there should be no role for INEC.
Yeah.
Parties should. But the problem is,
the party themselves can't put themselves together.
Because the structure, I talked about fragile democracy. Yes. So rules don't matter. They're not determinative. And there are too many indeterminacies. And so I will vote for INEC and court regulating the party structure. All
right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi. It looks like an interesting build-up to 2027. Dr. Sam Amadi is the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Thank you for your thoughts tonight.
Thank you.